Hey guys, Aaron CybertronVGC here, and today I'm back with another episode of Road to Ranked, where I climb the online Regulation D VGC ladder in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and provide live commentary as I go. In this video, I'll be trying out a really strong hard Trick Room team that reached rank number 1 on Pokemon Showdown and features an amazing underrated combination in Instructor Oranguru plus Choice Specs Enamorus-Therian form. Enamorus-Therian saw very little play throughout the Regulation D format, and this might just be the best Enamorus team that I've tried. It makes this Pokemon look absolutely broken, so I'm really excited to feature it. You've also got some fun sets like Bruxish as well as Maushold, and the team is just so fun to use and can win games super quickly. As always, I'll do a quick breakdown of the team, but if you want to just skip to the battles, check out the timestamps down below, and thank you so much as always for joining me. If you enjoy, would really appreciate it if you consider leaving a like in the video or subscribing to the channel. It really helps out a ton. One quick note, we're in this weird in-between right now where the online ladder actually is not the Regulation D rule set. It allows for some of the brand new legendary Pokemon from the DLC to be allowed, so Ogerpon as well as Sinistra, for example, but it does not allow for all of the new Pokemon. You can't use Alolan Ninetales, so we don't know what the Regulation E format is as of when I'm posting this video at the end of September, but I figured I still wanted to post some content before Regulation E officially kicks off, and I've been taking some time off the last few days just because I'm starting my last year of grad school, moved into a new place, and just getting settled and acclimated with everything, but I'm so excited to dive into Reg E content with all of you. So thanks for all your patience, and let's end this format with a bang. Breaking things down, as always, rental, pace, and team creator are linked down in the description below, and there is an incredibly in-depth team report written for this team as well, so if you want to go learn more about it, I will link that out. Please go check it out because it is so well constructed, and I think really good insight into how a team like this operates. One thing to quickly note is that if you're watching this video, this is being posted at the end of September, and the Regulation E rule set, which introduces brand new Pokemon, starts in the beginning of October. So the team will be a little bit outdated as it wasn't built for this new metagame, but I still think it's really fun and powerful, and if you are watching this at the end of Regulation D, then of course feel free to try it out yourselves. But let's just dive into things. The thing that was really interesting to me about this team was Enamorus-Therian. Like I mentioned in the beginning, this Pokemon actually does not see very much usage in competitive VGC, but it has an amazing ability in Overcoat, which gives it immunity to Spore from Amoonguss. That's a really big deal because Amoonguss is generally a huge pain for Trick Room teams to deal with, so having an ability that just counters that is really, really good. In addition, the base special attack of this Pokemon is just bonkers, right? It's base 135 special attack, so the idea behind this Enamorus is just to deal massive amounts of damage with your Fairy type attacks. You've got Choice Specs, you've got Fairy Tera, and you've got max special attack. If you think about it, Flutter Mane is base 135 special attack as well, and Flutter Mane with Choice Specs also really hits really hard. Now, imagine Enamorus under Trick Room with Fairy Tera, with Specs, with Dazzling Gleam, paired with Instruct from Oranguru. You can just sweep teams so quickly with this combination specifically. So Dazzling Gleam is kind of your go-to move actually over Springtide Storm, because Springtide is just really inconsistent because of its accuracy. 80% is just not really that great. But the upside of Springtide is if you're not confident you're going to get a KO with Dazzling Gleam, but you know you will with Springtide, that's the reason to really go for it. Otherwise, you've got Moonblast and then Earth Power, which gives you coverage against things that otherwise resist Fairies, such as Heatran and Golden Go, for example. The thing about Enamorus is it's obviously really slow, so in order to enable it, you're going to want to set up Trick Room. This is a team that is as hard Trick Room as it gets. If you don't get Trick Room up with this team, it's very likely you're just going to lose the game. So how do you enable that you actually get that Trick Room up on turn 1, or maybe turn 2 or turn 3? It's all about 2 leads specifically, Oranguru plus Maushold or Bruxish plus Maushold. Both of these are really valuable Trick Room setters, right? Bruxish has an amazing ability in Dazzling, which is able to block priority from your opponent, so no Fake Out, no Prankster Taunt from something like Tornadus, for example. Oranguru, on the other hand, has Inner Focus, which allows you to not get flinched by Fake Out as well, and one of the main reasons to use Oranguru is because it gets access to Instruct, which is just an absolutely amazing move, especially when paired with Enamorus. So the idea is that you're going to want to lead Maushold plus one of your 2 Trick Room setters depending on kind of the matchup. For example, Bruxish I like bringing if my opponent has a lot of priority and if they have Pokemon that can threaten with super strong damage that Oranguru can't resist. For example, Golden Gold with Make It Rain. And so the idea is that on turn 1 with this team is so important. You're often going to want to figure out how can I get Trick Room safely while also getting my Trick Room Sweeper in immediately. So you can go for Follow Me if you think your opponent's just going to go for damage and try to knock out the Maushold. This Maushold is obviously really bulky with max HP and max defense, so one thing that can be a little bit awkward is the Maushold actually survives both attacks from your opponent's end, and sometimes your opponents will go for spread moves and both Pokemon will survive as well. But the idea is that this Maushold has U-turn. So if you think like you're going to survive on turn 1, you can go for a U-turn and say, okay, if you knock out Maushold, fine, you just give me a free switch into Enamorus or Ursaluna or Urshifu. And if you don't get the knockout, well, then I pivot out with U-turn and then get a free switch into these Pokemon. So the general idea is to try to set up Trick Room and then get your sweepers in immediately, but you don't necessarily always need to set up Trick Room on turn 1. I'd say the majority of the games you're going to go for it, but because you have moves like Encore as well as Taunt on the Maushold, sometimes it's actually more valuable to say Encore, a Fake Out user, and then go from there. Taunt is nice on Maushold to taunt other Pokemon that might try to deny us Trick Room. For example, Pokemon that can imprison our Trick Room, like Farigiraf, or Indeedee, which can reverse Trick Room as well. But for the most games, I would say I'm generally aiming to go for a Follow Me Trick Room or a U-turn Trick Room setup. Sometimes you can hard switch Maushold as well, but be wary of that because then you lose your friend guard and your Pokemon might get exposed to taking a lot of damage. What's really important about this team is maximizing your turns of Trick Room, and what's really awkward is if you set up Trick Room but then you have Maushold and Oranguru on the field after that, because obviously these Pokemon just don't do any damage. So that's why it's so important to figure out how can I position my sweeper in immediately so that as soon as I set up Trick Room, I have 4 turns to work with where I can fully dominate with said Pokemon. If you are able to, for example, U-turn your Maushold out into Enamorus and get Trick Room up safely with the Oranguru, then you can just go Fairy Tera, Instruct Dazzling Gleam, and that can just win you games so dang quickly. So generally, you're going to go with one lead of Oranguru Maushold or Bruxish Maushold. That's going to be in like 95% of games. And then in the back, you pick 2 of 3 sweepers between Enamorus, Urshifu, and Ursaluna. The Ursaluna here is really standard. It is just Brave, max attack, max HP. Enamorus here also really standard. Fairy Tera. You've got Ghost Tera here defensively, which is kind of the norm on Ursaluna. But you've got a couple of interesting things to call out with this team. Oranguru has Safety Goggle, so immunity into Amoonguss. Water Tera, really amazing defensively on this. And you also have Encore. Encore is an amazing move with this team because it allows you to Encore your opponent into something that's not Protect, and being able to put on the pressure and attack slots that cannot Protect is so important because one of the easiest ways to stall out Trick Room normally is to use Protect. So that's going to be a really critical move with this. The Maushold here has Taunt, which like I mentioned earlier is going to be really valuable in opposing setup-oriented Pokemon. It's also really nice into Pokemon that want to deny us Trick Room, right? That's actually, I'd say, the primary use of the Taunt. So this is a really good tool. Taunt plus Encore also can do some funky things against opponents. And to round things out, you've got this Urshifu, which is Power Belt. The idea behind Power Belt Urshifu is obviously you're able to outspeed a lot more Pokemon than your opponents will generally anticipate, which is really, really cool. For example, with this, you are actually able to outspeed, min-speed Ursaluna, and if they, don't Tera, then you can just close combat. If they Tera, you can just Wicked Blow it. You've got Grass Tera here as well to deal with the Amoonguss, so a lot of Amoonguss counterplay here with Goggles on this, Flame Orb on this, as well as Overcoat and the Grass Tera. The Bruxish here, by the way, is also Power Band. So the whole point of these power items is to be able to get an attack off before, say, Enamorus or the Ursaluna move, right? So the theory here is that with the... And with Urshifu, actually, you're still gonna be faster than the Enamorus, right? Because it's 93. But the idea is, like with Bruxish, for example, Bruxish will be able to go for a Super Fang, drop your opponent's damage or HP, and then you can finish things off with Enamorus and Ursaluna. And so that's really nice because it's all about kind of going for the combos with this team to get these guaranteed knockouts. And so, yeah, I think the team, even though it's fairly straightforward, it's like my first decision is, okay, do I go Oranguru Maushold or Bruxish Maushold? And then the second decision is which 2 of the 3 sweepers do I want in the back? That's like for the majority of the games. What's really then important is figuring out how do I play turn 1 and turn 2? How do I get Trick Room up safely? And then how do I get my sweeper in accordingly as well? So those are the main things that you're going to want to think about. And like I mentioned, check out that team report. It is so in-depth and so good. So yeah, that's it for a breakdown. Now let's highlight some weaknesses. So in terms of weaknesses, I think the first thing to call out is that because it's a hard Trick Room team, if your opponent's actually able to deny you Trick Room and reverse your Trick Room, things can get really awkward. You do have a lot of counterplay because of the Maushold and the Taunt combination in particular, so that's what you're going to use against those Pokemon that are often going to try to do that. But if Trick Room is denied early on, I think this game, or the game, just becomes really difficult to win. And so, for example, if you're able to get a critical hit that just knocks out the Trick Room setter, if you're able to flinch Bruxish, for example, and deny it attacking on turn turn 1. And like secondary effects I think can be really scary, especially early on in the game. That can be pretty problematic. Imprison Trick Room is also a scary combination, but like I mentioned, you're going to try to want to use Maushold to taunt those Imprison users ideally. But if you're up against like Imprison Trick Room Fluttermane, that is a complete disaster. Enamorus in particular doesn't love going up against Steel type Pokemon. You do have Earth Power, but I think just being able to resist these attacks is still a little bit annoying. Wide Guard I think can be particularly concerning because Enamorus relies on Dazzling Gleam and Springtide Storm a lot, and Ursaluna likes to use Earthquake a lot, so that's one thing to watch out for. And with this team, you always want to put on pressure and get knockouts, so what can be really awkward is you set up Trick Room in the beginning of the game with Oranguru or Bruxish, but then Maushold does not get knocked out, and you didn't click U-turn, then the Maushold is kind of just stuck on the field, and you kind of waste another turn of Trick Room. So that's why it's turn 1, turn 2 with this team is so important, because it's all about getting your Trick Room Sweeper in safely. And I think another weakness is if you are not able to win the game quickly enough under Trick Room and Trick Room is expired, then your opponent can very quickly overwhelm you with offense, and I think that can be really scary. So that's one thing to watch out for as well. I think also selecting the last 2 of the 3, I wouldn't say this is a weakness of the team, it's just something like maybe is tricky, where I think some of the games I've lost while practicing with this team is because I picked the wrong Pokemon and left the wrong sweeper out on the bench basically. So those are just a couple of things to know as you play with this team or against it. Alright, we've got Dragapult, Chien-Pao, Fire Ogerpon, Rillaboom, Landorus, and Farigiraf. This is really similar to the team that finished second at the 2023 World Championships. And as I mentioned, the ladder is in this weird place right now where Ogerpon and the DLC Legends are allowed, but the rest of the Pokemon aren't allowed. So it's in this weird state where we're not playing Regulation D. I don't know if that's going to be the Regulation E rule set, but I would imagine other Pokemon are also allowed in Regulation E. But at this point, it's basically impossible to play the ladder without running into the DLC mon, so I'm going to showcase how good this team is, even though it's built for a format where those Pokemon did not exist. My immediate impression here is that Enamorus, I think, looks really powerful. The main question as always is, what do we want to lead with, right? It's going to be Maushold and one of Oranguru or Bruxish. Personally, think it's okay to just go with Oranguru here. I don't think the anti-priority is really that important. So go with these 2, and I think in the back just go with Ursaluna plus the Enamorus. I think Bruxish is actually pretty interesting here. Wave Crash does significant damage, but I would rather prioritize just getting Enamorus out next to Oranguru, so I can just go for something like Fairy Tera, Dazzling Gleam, Instruct Dazzling Gleam, for example. Okay, so it's going to be Chien-Pao Dragapult. This duo, even though it was not like the most commonly used, was amazing throughout the 2023 season. It won a regional championship, won the North American International Championship, and then got second at the World Championships. So with the amount of offense my opponent has, I mean, I'm personally okay just going for Follow Me plus Trick Room. I think like these leads are fairly straightforward. Could be something... I think it'll be interesting if you have Dragon Darts and Crunch here. Yep, so it is Darts. But, okay, that doesn't actually even do over 50 to Maushold. Nice. Lash Out. Okay. Yeah, I was thinking whether or not I should have actually defensively Tera there to survive the... like, if Dragon Darts actually got the knockout onto the... Maushold, but I figured we'd be okay in that position. So a little bit scary, but that's fine. Now we get Enamorus in, and it's time to just go Fairy Tera, Dazzling Gleam, Instruct Dazzling Gleam. That's one of the best things that you can do with this team. So we're going to Tera, we're just going to Gleam, and we're going to just Instruct. And at this point, my opponent really has no answer to this, right? Like, maybe you can switch in Ogerpon. Your best bet would be protect Chien-Pao, sacrifice Dragapult, get the free switch into Ogerpon, probably. But there's no Tera here that can really save them too much given the common Teras on these Pokemon. I guess Steel Tera Dragapult is used, but you just committed Dragon Dart. So, yeah, I think if I'm my opponent here, I'm always protecting Chien-Pao and just sacrificing Dragapult. And I think if they do anything else, it gives me an even larger advantage. But with this team, it's ideal to be in this spot where we essentially safely set up Trick Room, right? And get our Trick Room Sweeper in immediately. So, Fairy Tera Enamorus here. The reason I went for Fairy Tera, by the way, was to cover for something like Protect Chien-Pao and then Ogerpon switches in, because then we would just do so much damage, where then we just knock it out the next turn. So, yep, they're going to go for the Protect Chien-Pao play that I talked about. That's expected. But we're just going to Gleam here. Cool. So, one of the interesting things I could have considered here, by the way, was not Tera with the Enamorus and actually switch Oranguru out into the Ursaluna. By doing that, I, one, don't commit my Tera, which means then the subsequent turn I can go for something like Dazzling Gleam plus Earthquake. So, I think that actually would have been a stronger play in this match, just because I think my opponent's play this turn is so telegraphed. Like, I think you pretty much always have to protect Chien-Pao there. And I think you could switch out Dragapult, so the idea of going for Instruct there was to cover for a switch. But they actually bring out Farigiraf. Okay, I don't think that's going to help them. I'm just going to Dazzling Gleam and Instruct again here. Yeah, I don't really see how you stop this duo at this point. And I think this team makes such good use of Enamorus. Because I think the thing about Enamorus, one of the reasons why it wasn't used very much throughout the 2023 season, even after it was introduced, is that it's just really slow. And even though it does a lot of damage, it doesn't necessarily secure those knockouts. However, when you combine it with Choice Specs as well as Instruct from Oranguru, it becomes way more effective. I think one of the other cool things about this Oranguru plus Enamorus combination is that it can completely wall Amoonguss thanks to safety goggles on Oranguru as well as the overcoat on the Enamorus. So they're not going to bother switching out Dazzling Gleam here. Look how much damage this does, right? We just did 70% to the Farigiraf. And this is where the Instruct from Oranguru is also a really big deal, right? Like, without the Instruct, then we're not actually getting the knockouts, and that was kind of the problem I was talking about earlier. But you combine Fairy Tera with Choice Specs with Instruct support from Oranguru, and you're just dealing so much more damage. We're not even going for Springtide Storm here, by the way. We're just going for Dazzling Gleam, and part of the reason for that is because why risk the accuracy, right? Missing on something like the Chien-Pao would be really bad for us, so I want to just secure the knockout onto both Pokemon. And with this team, it is not rare for Enamorus to actually just pick up every knockout. So far, every single little bit of damage that we've done has just been from Dazzling Gleam. So yeah, my opponent's now just down to their final Pokemon, and this is how quickly you can win games with this team. If you're able to get the first 1 or 2 turns right, it kind of just blows the game wide open. So Rillaboom is going to be my opponent's last Pokemon here, but at this point, you're not really able to do too much. One cool thing that you can do with this Oranguru, by the way, is go for an Encore immediately. The logic behind going for Encore here, by the way, is to cover for Rillaboom going for Fake Out, right? If you Fake Out into the Enamorus and I Encore you, then you just get locked into that. But from this position, there was no way Rillaboom was ever going to win a 1v4. So, yeah. But this game just highlights how good Enamorus can be, right? With the Instruct support from the Oranguru, I think I have never used a team in this format that allows Enamorus to just sweep as effectively as this team does. And this team, of course, is very much intentionally designed so that you have some of the strongest attackers and some of the strongest spread moves in the game, whether it be Earthquake from Ursaluna or the Dazzling Gleam / Springtide Storm from Enamorus. So I think that game was kind of a perfect showcase to demonstrate how effective this set can be. By the way, if you're curious about that damage calc with Dragon Darts from Jolly, Max Attack, Choice Band, Dragapult, which should be the case in these sets, the Maushold survives 100% of the time. It does 80.6 to 96%. So yeah, one of the things I was thinking about is, because I wasn't sure about this damage calc off the top of my head, if you do have a chance of knocking out, or if it's like a higher chance of KO, I would actually consider going for a defensive Tera on Oranguru, because I really don't want Oranguru to faint on turn 1. But given this damage calc, then Follow Me plus Trick Room I think is pretty much always the safe play. So yeah, one thing that my opponent could have done that would have been a little bit awkward for us was protect Chien-Pao and Dragon Darts on turn 1, because that would have denied me an immediate switch into my sweeper. But then what I probably would have done the subsequent turn was just go for Encore onto the Chien-Pao slot and then U-turn and get Enamorus in safely. And I think that would also work. We would just have one less turn of Trick Room to work with. But yeah, just wanted to flash up this calc because I wasn't sure, and this just makes me feel a little bit better about the play that I made on turn 1. Okay, we've got a Reg D team here, but a pretty interesting one with Dondozo Tatsu, Cress Iron Hands, Grim, and the Hisuian Gudra. I think Hisuian Gudra definitely takes first place in Pokemon that I thought would be really strong and just did not have a very strong performance throughout the Regulation D format. I do think it was kind of underexplored personally, but very few players brought it to the World Championships. And I think ultimately it suffers from a couple of issues, and the main one is that it's just a little bit passive and it takes a while to get going. But this is a pretty scary team in my opinion. The first thing that I know is I think fairy coverage in general is just really good. This is one of the games where I'm actually, like, do I actually want to lead with the classics? I think like Super Fang Bruxish here actually makes it compelling to consider. We have so many options here, but it's hard for me to actually see which ones are the absolute best ones immediately. Okay, I think I want to go with Oranguru, Mouse, Enamorus. And then it's one of Urshifu or Ursaluna. Okay, I'm going to bring Urshifu here. I'm just going with the top 4. The reason I wanted to bring Urshifu in this matchup, I think, is because if they go for Dondozo, I think just getting those guaranteed crits is really nice. And I think, like, Ursaluna's matchup into Dondozo is a little bit more shaky. So it's mainly Dondozo that compelled me to bring Ursaluna. Grimmsnarl on Cresselia. Now, this is really interesting. So, the thing about a lead like this is that it is super, super passive, right? You're not really doing much damage with either Pokemon. So this is where we can start going for stuff like Encore. Like, I can Encore Grimm on turn 1 and Taunt into Cresselia. And I could also Encore Taunt this slot simultaneously, right? But I'm worried about Cresselia being set up like Calm Mind, so I'm down to go for Taunt there. Oh, it's actually Fake Out onto Grimm. Or from Grimm onto Maushold. Okay. Huh? Whoa. Okay. Let's calm down here, folks. Wait, that was so cool. They skill swap me. Huh. Okay. So in this position, the Grimm more or less has to switch out, right? You don't know that I have Taunt on Maushold either. I definitely did not expect that coming out from the Cresselia. So I think, like, you do pivot this out right now, obviously. The question is what I want to do with Maushold. I could continue to Taunt into Cresselia. Honestly, I'm down to Encore this slot and Taunt it this turn. And then U-turn Trick Room next turn. Oh, they're just going to Dozo immediately? They must be, right? Okay. That works for me. That's part of the reason why I brought Urshifu. This is Grass Tera Urshifu, which is going to be our best answer. So, I am A-okay with this. Yeah. I think Urshifu is so well positioned right now. This has been such a bizarre game, though. Like, Grimcrest lead on Dozo Tatsu in the back with Skill Swap and Fake Out. It's been a ton of surprises. So, my idea there was to shut down Cresselia. So this turn's a little bit awkward, but that's fine. So many cool tricks. It is indeed Toxic Orb on Tatsugiri. Okay. But that's fine. You don't have that much pressure with Cresselia or Grimmsnarl, right? So it's like, what are you really going to do? Because of the way the speed orders work here, like, you can just double Wicked Blow this, right? Like, basically, I'm debating about Terraing here. So, Tera, Trick Room, and U-turn. Like, this is the setup I've been waiting for. I guess I could just protect on Dozo this turn, though, which would waste my Tera, which is kind of awkward. But the idea here is if Dondozo attacks, I U-turn, and you either knock out Maushold, which is fine, or I get the free switch into Urshifu. Ideally, they Wave Crash here into Oranguru. Okay, they go for Order Up. That also works. Yep, so you get an attack boost, but now it's time to get the ball rolling. So I'm going to U-turn out. Okay. And now, what we do is just pivot out into our Urshifu. And this is why it was very essential to bring Urshifu into this matchup. Cool. And Trick Room gets set up. Perfect. This Tatsugiri is also on a timer. You are leftovers on the Dondozo. Okay. So, I'm unsure if 2 Wicked Blows actually get the KO. And since you committed to Order Up, I know I'll survive one, so I'm happy to just actually Encore you right now into that, and then go for a Wicked Blow. Okay, they go for a Tera. This is my main question now. What Tera are you? Somehow we ran into Fairy Tera Order Up Dondozo. Holy moly. That's wild. This is quite the matchup, folks. The upside is they're not locked into Order Up, but wow, talk about the surprises here. Okay, yep, they Order Up into Urshifu. Sheesh! It's really the one Tera. And like Tera Dondozo, Tera Fairy Dondozo, that is not common, let me tell you that, folks. But this team is obviously full of surprises. That's fascinating. Okay, I'm just going to instruct Urshifu now, and then Wicked Blow. Okay, so we're continuing to deal decent damage. I mean, is there like a random Psych Up or something from their side of the field? This is a really bulky Dondozo too. It's still taking these really well. I mean, obviously it resists it, but yeah. They actually Order Up into Oranguru, okay. Nice. We survived that. Cool. This is honestly one of the most interesting matchups I've played in a while, I think, just because of how unique these sets are from my opponent's end. Poison Orb continues to tick down. Last turn of Encore, but one more turn of Trick Room. It's so frustrating. I think we just miss out on the knockout with the double Wicked Blow. It actually begs the question as to whether or not I should consider switching out the Urshifu here into Enamorus. If we don't think the double Wicked Blow will KO. I think I'll still go for it. Fairy Tera Leftovers Order Up, though. It's pretty fascinating. Yeah, I think we just fall short, unfortunately. This is where the Leftovers recovery was pretty huge for my opponent. Ah, so close. Yeah. Let me go for another Order Up. Oh, wow. That didn't even KO Urshifu. Oh, that's huge. I thought that would get the knockout for sure. Okay. I think that honestly wins me the game. Yeah, this is where, like, Encore has honestly just been one of the best tools to deal with Dondozo. But the reason why that's such a big deal is because it's the last turn of Trick Room, right? So it's like, even though Encore ended, you could protect, but Urshifu just attacks through that protect. So I'm just going to go for another Instruct here and Wicked Blow. Yeah, my opponent recognizes they can't win. Wow, that was wild. I think one thing that was maybe a slight misplay was the Order Up into the Oranguru slot. Because by going for the Oranguru, it prevented my opponent from being able to deal more damage onto the Urshifu slot. So, yeah, the fact that we were able to just survive there, and the fact that, like, Trick Room timed it perfectly, put us in a position where we could just get the knockout. I wonder if that's honestly Fairy Tera, Tera Blast Dondozo. I'm curious what other moves it has, but that is one of the most interesting teams I've seen in a while, where they had Fake Out on Grimmsnarl, Skill Swap on Cresselia, Toxic Orb on the Tatsugiri, and Fairy Tera Order Up on Dondozo. All of those are pretty surprising. I was curious, by the way, so I reverse engineered what I thought might be Dondozo's attack stat, and if I had to guess, I just think it has no attack investment, maybe very, very minimal. So that'll explain why even at +3 and +5 attack, it was not able to actually get the knockout onto Urshifu, and why our Wicked Blows were also not doing very much damage. It's likely that Dondozo was just super, super bulky and had its EVs invested very much in HP defense and special defense. So yeah, but what was really critical was that my opponent didn't keep using Order Up onto the Urshifu, and as a result, that one turn where they targeted Oranguru gave me an extra turn to work with, and things that timed basically perfectly. But yeah, that team was really scary to go up against, and I think the idea is, hey, if the Tatsugiri faints, for example, then you can bring out Cresselia and then go for like Lunar Blessing onto Dondozo. You have screen support from Grimmsnarl as well, so Dondozo just stays on the field forever, and it's basically impossible to KO. And the Fairy Tera here very specifically specifically helps against, of course, Dark Urshifu, but because of an Instruct, we were able to actually still do enough damage where we could win the game, and that team relies basically entirely on Dondozo because Tatsu, Grimmsnarl, and Cresselia aren't really going to do very much damage. So yeah, lots of interesting stuff there, but it's definitely a new take on Dondozo that I actually haven't fought against before. Whoa, this is such a cool team. Tornadus, Scarchomp, Iron Valiant, Articuno, Chi-Yu, Iron Hands. That's sick. I'm really worried about Wide Guard on Iron Valiant. Because without Wide Guard, I think Enamorus goes kind of hard here with our Fairy type attacks. There's just no defensive coverage for my opponent's side. And I think this is a Bruxish game as well. Bruxish, Maushold, Enamorus. I think I like Ursaluna here. Really cool team. Not the traditional stuff I would expect. Like Articuno, when I see, I almost expect it to... I pretty much always expect it, not almost, always expect it to be paired with the Abomasnow. So I think the lack of Abomasnow there is really interesting. Chi-Yu and Iron Valiant, okay. Ooh. I think Spec Snarl here is very scary. Do I need to Tera defensively, though, to survive that? Because I think what I want to do is Trick Room here and just follow me turn 1. I'm going for a Tera. Okay. Oh, if this is Dark Tera Chi, I'm going to cry. Okay, it's Ghost. That's fine. That's okay. We go for Follow Me. We've got Friend Guard support and Focus Sash support. Okay, well, things work out. What? Throat spray Chi-Yu? But it's special Iron Valley with Dazzling. Talk about the surprises. So that was not an ideal turn 1. If Maushold had actually U-turned out there and I got a free switch into Ursaluna, I think we'd be so well positioned right now. But this is the classic dilemma with this team when you don't get a free switch into what you're looking for. Just a little bit awkward. I don't have Population Bomb here on Maushold. Friend Guard and Follow Me support still valuable. You know, what's really tricky here is my opponent might just double protect. I was like... I mean, if it were Choice Specs, actually, we'd have just lost both Pokemon, huh? But it was the Dazzling Gleam I didn't expect at all. That's really cool. Wave Crash Protect. But they might just double protect here. I thought about hard switching. They forgot about the Dazzling, but I protected there anyway, so... the one thing that turn accomplishes is that it reveals some information that I... But what that also... Like, the Vacuum Wave covers for me switching out Maushold, right? Okay. This is, like, now the dilemma. Do we think they have Wide Guard on the Iron Valiant? Like, Iron Valiant to begin with is not that common of a Pokemon. I only have 3 turns of Trick Room left, and I just don't think I can really play this game assuming they have Wide Guard. So I'm going to Dazzling Gleam here, and... I know you have Vacuum Wave, so I could Ghost Tera U-turn, which covers for Focus Sash Iron Valiant. I might do it, honestly. Now that you revealed that Vacuum Wave. Dazzle, Ghost Tera, U-turn. I'm mainly worried about Focus Sash Iron Valiant. It's funny, the reason I'm worried about it is because I featured Iron Valiant at the end of this format. If you want to see me play with the cool Iron Valiant team, I'll link it down below. But the idea here is I need to maximize my turns of Trick Room, and I'm looking to just get a double knockout right now if I can. Chi protects, that's fine. If you Vacuum Wave here, that's really good. Oh, okay, no Vacuum Wave either. So I don't know if that Tera may have ended up being a waste on the Maushold. But it was Focus Sash, yep. So I actually really don't regret going for Ghost Tera, because I think in another world they Vacuum Wave us, and I don't get the knockout there, and they stalled another turn of Trick Room. This gives me so much more momentum, because it allows me to switch in my Ursaluna in for free right now. Yeah. Talk about surprises, though. Dazzling Gleam, Focus Sash Iron Valiant, Throat Spray, Snarl, Chi-Yu. And the good thing is by not going for Tera and Enamorus, now I can actually Earthquake safely next to it, so I get this dynamic duo out. But it's Iron Hands. I mean, that's fine. You can only fake out one Pokemon, so I think we just Dazzling Gleam and Earthquake right now. And you take so much damage from either attack. Oh, interesting. They're not going to click fake out either. Okay. So we just get the knockout. Specs Dazzle does 80% basically to Iron Hands. We're just under it. Chi-Yu faints. Yeah, we just got Earthquake off. Okay, cool. The reality is that my opponent's team is fairly fast-paced and offensive, so I think they really struggle against a hard Trick Room team like the one we're using. The main way you beat this is to stall out Trick Room, but it is not very easy to accomplish. So the Ghost Tera didn't end up working out in this game, but I don't regret going for it because it was essential in, yeah, knocking out the Iron Valiant, surviving the turn, and getting that U-turn off. Just last turn of Trick Room here. If you're my opponent, you just protect Garchomp. But you already committed your Tera on turn 1, and you're never going to survive Dazzling Gleam and Facade. So, yeah. Cool team, though. I wish we could have seen the Articuno as well. It's very... Oh, you know what it probably is? I wouldn't be surprised if it were, what, Snowscape on Tornadus, so you manually set up the snow so that Articuno then can get the defense boost. That would make a lot of sense, because I was wondering, like, you don't have Abomasnow, so why is Articuno actually on that composition? But, yeah. Really cool comp there. The Iron Valiant was really cool as well. And if that were Choice Specs Chi-Yu, and they go for Dazzle plus Snarl, I just lose the game on turn 1. Now, the way I respond to that, the safer play may have been to go for Water Tera with Oranguru. I think that the tricky thing is just in closed team sheet. Like, I'm worried about something like a double up onto Oranguru with, like, Dark Pulse in close combat. So the question is whether or not I want to U-turn with the Maushold or whether or not I want to just go for the Follow Me. It's awkward when you go for Follow Me and your opponent doesn't get the knockout onto Maushold, but at least you still get Trick Room up. Whereas if you gamble really hard and you U-turn out Oranguru actually faints, it's a complete disaster. Okay, we've got Garchomp, Tornadus, Farigiraf, Brute Bonnet, Bundle, and Chi-Yu. Very fast-paced, very offensive. If this is Trick Room Imprison Farigiraf, though, it is looking tough. Gosh, I really do think that's going to be what we run into, but that is one of the best counters you can have against us. You know what the solution against it is, though? It's to taunt with Maushold. It's to taunt with Maushold. I want to go Mouse, Oranguru, Enamorus, Ursaluna here. Yeah, actually, I mean, as long as they don't go Torn Farigiraf and they don't go Tailwind Imprison, then what I can do is just taunt Farigiraf Trick Room. I can also taunt Encore U-turn Trick Room. This is fine, right? Yeah, we just... Water Tera. I'm gonna U-turn here. Chi-Yu, Water Tera, Trick Room. The one risk in Water Terraing is, like, if they make a play of Freeze Dry and Dark Pulse onto Oranguru right now, this is actually kind of risky. But if they don't, I U-turn and I get a free switch in into Enamorus. My opponent's just in terrible shape. And they actually just try to Hydro Pump us, and Mouse just dodges it, so that's also pretty lucky. But the idea here was I don't really need Mouse alive. Like, if it feints that double up, I just get the free switch in anyway, so yeah. It's lucky that we get the dodge, because it means Maushold actually survives for a little bit longer, but I don't think that was actually too important in the grand scheme of things. Cool. What this allows me to do now is just bring out the... You know, I think I'm fine going into Ursaluna here. Well, actually, they have literally no Enamorus switch in. I think, like, we just go Dazzle, Instruct Dazzle. Yeah. So the only thing that would have played out differently here if Hydro Pump hit is that I just lose Maushold, but Maushold has already done its job. Like, the whole point of Maushold is to set it up in the early game so that you get this safe Trick Room set up, right? So, Dazzle... Instruct. You know, actually, the interesting thing about this position is... Do I think that's Choice Specs Chi-Yu? He did such little damage to Oranguru. Because if we think that... It's Specs... Or if we think it's not Specs, what I could do is pivot Oranguru out into Ursaluna. But quite frankly, I think it's fine to just go for this. Even if you double protect this turn, what do you do next turn, right? Yeah, so Bundle protects, but that implies Chi-Yu isn't protecting, so that should just be a KO. Here's Gleam. Unless this is like super, super bulky Chi-Yu. Yeah. Little Instruct onto Enamorus. Hello, hello. We get another Dazzling Gleam. Honestly, I think my opponent literally has no answer for Enamorus. Like, their entire team has no fairy resistances. Even if you Tera, like, everything is just so frail. Your best bet would be Garchomp coming out, Steel, Tera, Garchomp, and then Iron Head. Farigiraf is not really going to help them out here. I think we just send it, honestly, and just Dazzling Gleam again and Instruct. What's their best bet? It would be to go for a double protect with Bundle and then reverse Trick Room with Farigiraf. They're going to go for a Tera here, so maybe it's a defensive Tera on Farigiraf, but I don't really see what that accomplishes. Huh? Oh, wow. Oh! Okay. I should have encored that slot, I think. Oh, never mind. Okay, that was a crit on Farigiraf. Even with Poison Tera, they can't survive this. This is what I mean. Like, there's no real resistance to double Enamorus Dazzling Gleam. This combo is so crazy. Oh, that feels so good. Oh my gosh. That's just double KO. Yeah. This is what I mean. I think, like, teams are just not very well equipped for the amount of damage that Enamorus specifically offers. Like, when you think about how to, or the common fairy types in the format, it's mainly Flutter Mane, right? So, like, people index on beating Flutter Mane, and my opponent has, like, a lot of speed control to outspeed Flutter Mane. You've got Tornadus, obviously, to set up Tailwind. You've got Iron Bundle for booster energy, Icy Wind, for example. But in Enamorus under Trick Room with Instruct, complete different story. Brute Bond's the last one, but this thing has Overcoat, so we don't even have to worry about Spore, and we outpace it anyway. So, yeah, just Instruct, Dazzle, Instruct. That's what makes this team so strong. If you set it up properly, and you're like, a lot of teams just literally are not equipped to deal with this kind of combination. So you can win games so quickly. And yeah, I think like the way that you beat this team is either to deny Trick Room outright, which my opponent did have Farigiraf in team preview. So like I said, if you have Tornadus Farigiraf, things would have been really interesting because you would have been able to like go for Tailwind plus Imprison immediately. And that means that you get the Imprison off before I get Taunt off into Farigiraf. So I was mainly worried or like concerned about what Farigiraf set my opponent was running, but in the end did make an appearance, so we were all good. Alright, we've got Armarouge, Indeedee, Tornadus, Landorus, Fluttermane, and Roaring Moon here. Feels like... if Armarouge is Wide Guard, this becomes a little bit dicey. Maybe I should bring Urshifu here. Maushold lead, maybe. I'm thinking Maushold Bruxish. Bruxish is just really good into Indie Armarouge, and like Wave Crash is actually amazing here. Enamorus. I'm between Urshifu and Ursaluna here. I think I want to bring Urshifu. Like, Wicked Blow is strong. My main hesitance with Ursaluna here is it's like the common battle between like, oh, do I go for a normal type facade? Because if I do, then you can switch in Fluttermane. Or, oh, if I go for a ground type attack, you can pivot in Landorus, for example. And one bad turn with Ursaluna can set you back pretty significantly. So for that reason, I think I'm going to drop it here. Whereas Urshifu Wicked Blow is pretty consistent across the board. Landorus, Fluttermane. So, should survive a Rock Slide and Dazzling Gleam here. I'm worried about Fairy Tera. If I think we get Flinch with Bruxish, it's actually just game over. Which is scary. The other debate is, do I go for Follow Me or U-Turn? Because if they go Rock Slide, Dazzle, there's a chance I survive with bold Pokemon, and Maushold is stuck in an awkward spot. So I personally like to U-Turn into Fluttermane and just Trick Room. Oh, nice play. This is, so I get punished for it. I was predicting Rock Slide. This might actually just deny me Trick Room outright. Like, my read is, or my prediction there was my opponent always expects Maushold to follow me, but they may have just gotten the knockout onto Bruxish immediately here. Is it Moonblast? That's a really good play. Like, this is one where I try to get a little fancy because I was like, I think I can get all my turns of Trick Room up, but let's see if they doubled up onto Bruxish. Do we survive this? If you're not Specs, I think I actually do. Okay, nice. We're good. Sweet. So with Friend Guard there, it's actually huge. Yeah, I get U-Turn out now. I safely get Trick Room up. Also confirm that it's Choice Scarf Landorus. No booster on on Flutter. It's obviously on Roaring Moon. So I get a free switch in now. And I think with this, we can just go out into Enamorus. Okay. Enamorus hits the field. Trick Room set up. It's plus speed booster Roaring Moon, so the damage output from that is not that scary. I mean, if you didn't bring Armarouge, I think it's time to just send it, honestly. Fairy Tera, Dazzling Gleam, and just Wave Crash here into Fluttermane. Roaring Moon should not put on pressure against Enamorus. The only thing I'm worried about would be something crazy like Steel Tera, plus the Steel type attack onto the Enamorus slot. I don't know the item on Flutter. Roaring Moon switches. Armarouge is the one switch you can have here that would help right now. But it's Indeedee. Okay, great. Given that, you can see my opponent has no answer to Fairy Tera and Enamorus at this point. Dazzling Gleam should 2-hit KO everything. Maybe not Psychic Seed Indeedee if you're Psychic Seed here. Is that the case? Nope. Okay. I see no response from my opponent really then. I guess here you could protect your Fluttermane. Yeah, that would work. But even then... no protect. Cool. Every turn that you can get... oh my gosh. This is why Bruxish is amazing, by the way, right? And why it's a cool choice over Oranguru. Because Oranguru doesn't do damage. It's just used for Instruct. Bruxish... that was a -1 Wave Crash and an almost one-shot Fluttermane. Yep, and Gleam does 80% to NDD. So with Trick Room set up and with no real response, this game I think is just over. So we can now bring out, might as well just bring out Urshifu. I mean, you've got Roaring Moon Landorus on the back, it's Scarf Landorus, and with Roaring Moon I can just go for Gleam plus a Wicked Blow onto that slot. May bring Landorus out. Cool. This team feasts on Choice Scarf Pokemon, right? If you're able to actually set up Trick Room, it's amazing. Now, my opponent could have gone for something really risky. If they had actually gone for Moonblast onto Bruxish, I also would have just lost this immediately, right? But it's like, very few people are going to U-turn plus Moonblast there because they're worried about letting me set up Trick Room safely. So, yeah, we'll just Gleam and Wicked Blow now. There's no response to this, and no Tera either. Yep, Enamorus just outpaces. It's going to knock out Inity. Almost just one-shots Landorus. That's a spread move, and that's Dazzling Gleam. That's not even Springtide Storm. Like, I feel like this team makes Enamorus actually look broken. And there's a lot of counterplay to Enamorus, but my goodness, does this team make Enamorus look like such an amazing Pokemon. I mean, it is an amazing Pokemon with this team specifically. This is what I love about Pokemon, right? It's like Enamorus sees such little play in competitive VGC in the Regulation D format, but on the right team, on this team specifically, it is such a carry for the team. And a lot of teams just discount it in the team building process, which gives you a pretty significant advantage. So, yeah. This is how quickly you can win games with this, right? It's just absolutely unbelievable. And this was even without a Oranguru support in this game specifically. So it is just a remarkably strong Pokemon that can really quickly deal so much damage to your opponent's team. And there's just really no true resistance to it, I feel like. Very few Pokemon that can reliably deal with it. Okay, we've got Ogerpon, Rillaboom, Heatran, Iron Hands, Fluttermane, and Gyarados. Don't actually have that much experience fighting against that Ogerpon specifically, so I think it'll be interesting. Especially since, of course, this team was built for a non-Ogerpon meta. What do I want to lead with here? I think I really like Oranguru generally because of Encore, given the double fake out users, as well as like something like Taunt Gyarados. So I'm thinking Maushold plus Oranguru with Enamorus. I think it's probably better to just lean into Ursaluna here. As always, the one annoying thing about Ursaluna, or using Ursaluna, is when your opponent does have like a flying type and a ghost type, and so because they have Gyarados and Fluttermane here, means that they have pretty good switch-ins into Facade and our ground type attacks. Rillaboom, and of course, can set up the Grassy Terrain as well to reduce our Earthquake damage, but I think the pure amount of damage that we threaten Iron Hands with the Iron Hands with the Ursaluna is a really big deal, because I feel like if I bring out, for example, Urshifu, we just don't do very much into Iron Hands. Iron Hands does way too much into us, whereas Ursaluna can just threaten it with an immediate knockout. So, yeah. It's going to be Rillaboom and Fluttermane. Okay. What do I want to do against this? Personally, I'd like to just go... Like, this feels like a setup for the Enamorus, right? Speed boost, okay. Nice. Happy to run into that. Yeah, it's a setup for... And we have Inner Focus here, so I don't have to worry about getting flinched. I'm down to Trick Room. I think the main question with Maushold is... I am personally worried that they go, like, Fake Out into Maushold and then just attack Oranguru. I would love to get a free switch into Enamorus. They could also just like Woodhammer Moonblast into Oranguru. So the question is whether or not I want to play a little bit risky here. One interesting thing I could do is actually Ghost Tera Maushold to guarantee that I get a U-turn off here. I actually think that's pretty compelling. Trick Room, Ghost Tera, U-turn. The idea behind this is I still have Friend Guard from the Maushold, and it's like a generally safe way to get in the Enamorus, basically. I guess I actually could go in Ursaluna as well. The downside with this is it means that I can't Tera my Enamorus, but I basically just don't want to end up getting flinched on turn 1 and then not getting a free switch in. Oh. Okay, I definitely did not expect Calm Mind. That's really cool. But I can actually Encore the Flutter Mane into that, so it's actually not too bad. And they just end up Wood Hammering into Maushold. So, yeah, my Tera in the end ends up being wasted, but I don't regret that play because what's so important with this team is just getting a free switch in into your Trick Room Sweeper, right? So now what I'll be able to do is U-turn out into the Rillaboom slot. It actually does pretty significant damage. And what this grants me is a free switch in into Enamorus. We're going to need to take care of Rillaboom ASAP. Once we get rid of Rillaboom, then I can go for my Ursaluna setup. So I know that Tera seemed kind of weird, but basically with this team, it's so important to get your Trick Room Sweeper out immediately. So we've gotten the Enamorus out now. Curious if they brought Heatran in this battle, mainly because you should be worried a little bit about Ursaluna. I think what I would like to do is just Encore the Flutter Mane slot, and then just go for Moonblast onto Rillaboom to get a KO onto that. I could Springtide Storm as well. It's actually tempting, but I think I'd rather guarantee the knockout onto Rillaboom because it's really important for us to knock out Rillaboom early on to enable the, Ursaluna. Okay, so we're going to get the Encore off. There's 2 turns after this turn, so I think ideally this next turn I probably pivot Oranguru out into my Ursaluna and then go for a... I keep saying high horsepower Stomping Tantrum. Headlong Rush onto the Flutter Mane. I'm also curious how much 2 Moonblasts do, but this Flutter Mane likely is really bulky, but there's no way you're going to survive an attack from the Ursaluna, so... And Gyarados hits the field immediately. Okay, that works for me. So because we know this slot is locked, I mean, Gyarados can Waterfall this slot, but we still have so many turns of Trick Room to work with. I'm just going to switch an Ursaluna out right now, and then just go for Moonblast onto the Gyarados slot. I'm feeling pretty good about this positioning. And my hope here is to... Yeah, like Flutter Mane will be locked in for one more turn, and even if Gyarados Waterfalls the Ursaluna as it switches in, we should survive. So then the next turn, we just get to launch an attack onto the Flutter Mane. Flutter Mane maybe then switches out, but the whole idea is to just make all of these turns that it's been on the field completely useless. So here's an Enamorus going for Moonblast. Oh my gosh, that's so much damage. Citrus Berry on Gyarados, that's fine. Yeah, Choice Specs Moonblast from this Enamorus is just so powerful. This is where, though, if I had conserved my Tera, I would have been able to just Tera here, right? But they actually end up Thunder Waving into Enamorus, just hoping for paralysis. So this is perfect, right? Encore on Oranguru is such a big deal because with that Encore now, we have made Flutter Mane completely useless in this game. So even though I had this cool surprise Calm Mind, which actually would have been quite good against our team, the Ursaluna was perfectly positioned for it. I think my main question here is what is the Tera type on Flutter Mane? Because I wouldn't be surprised if it were a defensive Tera. So part of me wonders, should I actually consider going for... There's still 2 turns of Trick Room to work with. It seems kind of crazy. I'm actually thinking about clicking Facade into that slot. What defensive Tera would you have? It would mainly be Grass, right? I don't know. Headlong Rush still just does so much damage. I think I'm happy to just, let's actually think this through. Because I'm running out of turns of Trick Room. I still have a couple turns to work with, though. I'll just Moonblast Headlong Rush. And they don't Tera. Cool. This is just a double KO then. Beautiful. This is why you run Encore on Oranguru. The Oranguru is such good support, and having that move specifically can really bail you out of tricky positions. I was mainly worried about something. We get a crit there, but I don't even think max HP, max defense, Flutter Mane surviving this. This is like one of the strongest physical attacks in the game. So, Flutter faints. I'm curious what their last one was, but I think this game was interesting because my opponent just did not deny Trick Room, and I went really hard on my Tera turn one just to enable, you know, my early setup. But yeah, Iron Hands is their last one, and because we brought Ursaluna, Ursaluna was so important, by the way, right? If I had brought the Urshifu over Ursaluna, we just wouldn't have been able to threaten with nearly as much damage. So last turn of Trick Room here. I'm happy to just go for Facade, which covers for a defensive Tera here, as well as a Moonblast. Right, like, think about how important Urshifu is against both the Fluttermane as well as the Iron Hands. Or, sorry, how important Ursaluna is against both of those. Urshifu would have been able to put on very little pressure against either. So, yep. Specs Moonblast almost just gets the KO, even with Assault Vest on the Iron Hands there. And Facade here will just finish it off. So, they never went for a Tera. I don't think they really had a position to really go for a Tera, but if Rillaboom were like Fire Tera, which is actually fairly common, they could have gone for that to resist the Moonblast and survive with Rillaboom. And if Fluttermane had a defensive Tera, I think those were the two opportunities for my opponent. I guess if Gyarados were Steel, it could have also gone for a Steel Tera potentially, but it would have depended on the Tera types here. But yeah, ultimately I think this game just highlights the strength of the power of Fluttermane, or sorry, the lack of power of Fluttermane when you're locked into Calm Mind. And one thing that's so good with Encore in this is that you're able to deny your opponent from protecting. So knowing that my opponent can't protect with Fluttermane and knowing exactly how many turns where it can't protect allows me to pivot in the Ursaluna and put on a lot of offensive pressure. Okay, we've got Tornadus, Goldengo, Urshifu, Hisuian Arcanine, Rillaboom, and Ogerpon here. Water Ogerpon. So, this comp feels very similar to some of the teams that were used at the World Championships. Tornadus, Goldengo, just a really powerful duo. I think Ursaluna is an absolute beast here. I don't think we need to lean into Urshifu. I think we can probably go with Bruxish here. The resistances to Goldengo is a really big deal, so I'm thinking Bruxish plus Maushold with Ursaluna in the back. Actually, because they have Goldengo, I'm more tempted to bring out Urshifu. Enamorus struggles a little bit more in this position. I think, like, Enamorus not doing good damage in a gold... Well, we do have, not high horsepower, earth power with this. I want to go more with Enamorus here. It's just, like, the Goldengo matchup, but Enamorus can actually still even two-hit knockout Goldengo thanks to... Oh, I guess we don't have Instruct in this game, though. Actually, because I'm not bringing Oranguru, I think I want Urshifu instead. To pressure with one-hit KOs with, like, Wicked Blow as well as Close Combat. So, let's see. And I'm going with the Bruxish lead here because it denies Fake Out from the Rillaboom, it denies Taunt from Tornadus, and it resists Make It Rain from the Goldengo. Water, Urshifu, and Hisuian Arcanine. Okay, it's okay with me. We're intimidated. I mean, I think here I'm really happy to just go for Trick Room and Follow Me. Like, my only hesitance here is that they don't knock out the Maushold. Like, they protect. No Teras, no switches. Swords Dance Urshifu could be kind of nasty here. But it's just Surging Strikes. Okay, perfect. I'm hoping it's just Surging Strikes, Flare Blitz, you knock out Maushold, and I just get a free switch into Ursaluna. I think that would be kind of the dream right now. Oh, that's not going to KO Maushold, and we might flinch. Okay, that's okay. I'm going to go for the same setup, though. Trick Room and Follow Me again. If you're my opponent, what you can do... Well, no, I was going to say Extreme Speed. You can't Extreme Speed because of Bruxish, which is actually really nice. So like, Urshifu has to attack first here again. Yeah. So it's hoping that we just don't get crit or flinch by Rock Slide again. If we get crit or flinched again, the game's just over. But that is one of the ways you can actually deal with this team, right? Actually, this might just KO... Yeah, I realize now it's Choice Banded. So that's how you can beat this team. Flinch with Rock Slide and deny me the ability to... I mean, what could I have done there at that point? Nothing, right? Okay, the play there... Yeah, because... So we had Friend Guard, which allowed me to survive the Rock Slide, but I had no Friend Guard and it was single target Rock Slide. It was definitely Choice Band on the Urshifu. So... This shows like one of the things that can be annoying for this team, and Oranguru actually would be the solution because of inner focus against this lead. So it would deny them the ability to flinch. So if I let Oranguru, I could have just gone like follow me plus Trick Room, and it would suck because I wouldn't have fainted. Is there any way in which I win this? I guess I can defensively Tera this, go for Earthquake. Do I even need a knockout Hisuian Arcanine though? Like, you probably switch this out. I think it's defensive Tera, Headlong Rush into this, and then Protect. But, yeah. So, does switch out. The game's over, though, honestly. If this team does not get Trick Room up, you pretty much lose the game. And my opponent essentially has a 27% chance to deny Trick Room on turn 1 because it's a 90% chance to hit the Rock Slide onto the Bruxish and then a 30% chance to flinch. So you need both of those to happen, obviously. So I don't really regret my lead because I think it's important to cover for things like Tornadus, Rillaboom, and Golden Go. But this game highlights how things can be awkward if you do get secondary effects like flinches. I don't think I really could have done anything past turn 1, honestly, as soon as that flinch came out. Okay, so they do Surging Strikes. I could have tried to attack there with my Urshifu. I think I actually should have, because like I'm so behind in the game. And what is the Protect really going to do there, right? Because it's like there's no way Hisuian Arcanine's actually staying in there. So that turn was actually suboptimal by me. But the reality is I think even if I had gone for Wicked Blow or Close Combat this turn, it doesn't make a difference. I'm just too far behind. I really think it is... I wouldn't say 100% impossible to win games if Trick Room isn't set up with this team, but it is very, very difficult. So, yeah. Like, at best, I would have been able to get a Wicked Blow to deal like 60% to Rillaboom, maybe have knocked out the Urshifu there, but now you just knock out both of my Pokemon pretty cleanly, right? So, I guess I can try to Facade here. Maybe go for a Crit Sucker Punch, but I don't even think that KOs. Yeah, and they just Fake Out. Fake Out plus Surging Strikes here is the safest option. So, the majority of times we get Trick Room up in this game, and obviously the game looks quite different, but one of the questions to ask is, okay, like, let's say I were playing a best of 3 against my opponent, it's like, it's clear that they don't have a really good way of denying Trick Room to me, and they identified their best chance of denying it with Rock Slide flinching, which I think is actually very good awareness by my opponent. So, we actually have a Pokemon that is immune to flinching in the Oranguru, so in a best of 3, I would actually consider just going with Maushold and Oranguru so that I don't get screwed over by a flinch from Rock Slide, for example. So it would be an interesting adjustment specifically for a scenario like this. But yeah, I think this was a game where my opponent just identified the best lead, and past turn 1, there's just nothing I can do because I don't have a safe switch into Surging Strikes, and I think without Friend Guard, that Choice Band Rock Slide actually just KOs the Bruxish anyway. So, yeah, past turn 1, there was really nothing I could do. But that's why turn 1 with this team is so important, and if it doesn't go well, like, you might just lose the game immediately, because it's all about setting up Trick Room with this team, and if you're able to deny that Trick Room and do a lot of damage, it is kind of the worst case scenario. So, yeah, an adjustment I could have made was to just bring Oranguru as a lead, or I just play with the same lead and accept that maybe they flinch me and play towards that reality. I think another interesting option there, by the way, is Water Tera Oranguru and U-turn. I didn't go for that, and even though it wouldn't have mattered we didn't bring Oranguru. Yeah, if I brought Oranguru, I would have been able to Water Tera and then just U-turn for a relatively safe Trick Room setup. The problem with that is if I get flinched on the Maushold with Rock Slide. But let's say like in a best of 3, I think my opponent's going to go with the Urshifu plus the Hisuian Arcanine lead again. I think Oranguru is the perfect adjustment, and I would go Oranguru plus the Maushold, and what I would do turn 1 is just go for Water Tera, Trick Room, U-turn with Maushold, bring out Ursaluna, and then go from there. So that way I can't at least get flinched with Oranguru, and it's easier for me to get my Trick Room set up. But like I said, I brought Bruxish in this game because I was really worried about things like Tornadus, Rillaboom, and the Golden Go. Golden Go in particular, I think, is a pretty big problem, but it turns out they didn't even need to bring it at all. So, yeah. Anyway, that's going to be it for this one, so thank you so much as always for joining me, and thank you to Cortex and his team building group for building and sharing this team. I'm really happy to showcase how good Enamorus-Therian can be when constructed correctly, and I think one of my favorite things about Pokemon is seeing how people build around specific Pokemon, right? Enamorus, very little usage rate in this format, but this team makes it look like an absolutely amazing, broken Pokemon, quite frankly, and so I think it's a testament to how team building can really fully enable Pokemon to come out and demonstrate just how powerful they can be. So, hope you all enjoyed. I am really looking forward to Regulation E, but happy to get some fun Regulation D games before we conclude the format, and I'll see you all soon. All right, peace.